As a child, I was what was known as an army brat. And my father was an Irish army officer for 40 years. But very early in his career, he served with the United Nations all around the Middle East, and we as his family were able to come out with him. Some of my brothers and sisters went to school out there. I was really only a child. I was 2, 3, 4 at a push at the time. We went everywhere. We went to Syria, Lebanon, Israel, all around. And at one point as well, we were in Gaza and lived there. The memories I have are pretty vivid for a child. More so of the people than the area, which in my mind is very like what we are seeing flattened before us. It was built up, and we lived in a complex, and the locals, who we knew as the Arabs, were warm people, funny people, good sense of humour, kind of excitable at times. But what I distinctly remember, even though I was, as I said, it was a microcosmic time in my development, they were kind. There was a kindness about them. Even the children were very kind. They were kind to me. I was a child, and a foreign child to them, with a little blonde head of hair on me at the time. And they'd grab me and they'd do motique, they used to say, and, they'd be running around, and if anything happened in the house, like a centipede got in and scorpions and stuff, they were in with a piece of newspaper and they'd grab it and put it in a barrel of water, I distinctly remember at one time. But within the surrounds of this complex we lived in, every afternoon, between 4ish and 5ish, I guess, this character would arrive. The landlord. He was known as Landlord. A middle-aged man, baldy man, always attired in pyjamas. Yeah, you can get away with it out there, it's so hot. I always remembered he seemed to always have his pyjamas on. That's what it looked like. It probably was some kind of local garb. And as I can still see him, as he'd come in to the area and the children would be getting excited to see Landlord, he would always look at me and gesture and say, "Come, Mark, I give you a chocolate, Mark." They were innocent days. Today you can be cynical and you can do the come and see the puppies routine, and you can be like that. But it wasn't that kind of thing. It was just a beautiful moment between a kind adult and a child. And sure enough, I'd go over to Landlord and he'd have a bag, and it was always a kind of paper bag, and he'd have sweets in it for me. I remember some of them were in the shape of cars, which is kind of novel to a child, and I'd get the sweets from Landlord. The 6-Day War broke out, I think, in 1967. Mum and my siblings, we got out. Dad stayed on. And we got our luggage back, I remember, in crates, and there were bullet holes in the luggage. I remember that. But anyway, many years went by. I eventually left school, and at the age of 18 or 19, I revisited the Middle East, because my father, at that point, was a very senior army officer. He was a camp commandant out in Lebanon. But we drove around and kind of reacquainted ourselves with the whole area, and ended up in Gaza, where I found myself in that place again, and that complex. And I asked around, and a lot of people didn't know what I was talking about. Lots of people had died, other people had moved on, but eventually, through fluke, I got talking to a couple of people. And I asked about this guy, Landlord. And someone said, "I'm sorry, he was killed in an air raid." I can't say I felt much but sorrow. I mean, I didn't really know the man that much. I was only a child when I knew him, but I thought that was sad. And as I was going, somebody else said, no, landlord. Oh, yes, landlord. Landlord went to New York. He did very well. He thrived. And I would prefer to believe the latter version. And all as I'll say, without being dramatic, is the events, the catastrophic events we have seen in the last month, the horrific events. My thoughts are with the empathetic, kind-hearted people and beautiful innocent children on both sides of the conflict everywhere in the world. The innocence, the moments of humanity we share with each other, like a guy giving a child a few old sweets. That meant a lot to me, so much so that nearly 60 years later I remember it. And as I watched the wanton destruction and the catastrophe unfold, I really just wonder, how far have we come, or have we come anywhere at all in the 21st century?